welcome, Hoosier fans, to this week's edition of Assembly Call Radio, where each week we discuss the most important IU basketball stories from the past 7 days. This is our 88th edition of Assembly Call Radio, and it is our 419th episode overall of the Assembly Call, recorded on the evening of Thursday, August 9th, 2018. I am your host, Jerod Morris. And let's begin this edition of the Assembly Call, how we begin every edition of the Assembly Call, and that is with our Hoosier Proud banner moment.
And Indiana is the national champion.
When it comes down, Indiana will be champion.
Martin takes the shot.
The Hoosiers have won the national championship.
Well, not a lot to choose from this week, which isn't all that surprising given that we are in the dog days of August, waiting for the players to return to campus and for practice to begin, and waiting patiently for the next big positive announcement on the recruiting trail. I suppose there were a few small little recruiting nuggets this week that were positive for Indiana, and that cumulatively, I guess, kind of adds up to a banner moment. So as I explained in a few of our new Banner Morning episodes this week, James Bouknight, a tough scoring guard out of Massachusetts, seems excited about visiting Indiana, according to a report by Adam Zagoria on his blog, so that's good. Zeke Naji, a lanky forward from Minnesota who has interest from Kansas and Arizona, among many others, has an unofficial visit to Bloomington coming up, as Corey Evans reported for Rivals, and Cathedral's Armand Franklin set his official visit date for the weekend of August 24th through the 26th, as reported by Cenk Weingarten of Stock Risers. And more importantly, Trace Jackson Davis announced his top 6 schools, and much to no one's surprise, Indiana was among the top 6. Also included were UCLA, Iowa, Wake Forest, Michigan State, and Purdue. Now, Indiana has been perceived as the clear leader for Jackson Davis for a while now, so no one is going to get too excited until an actual commitment is made. Still, being included in the 5-star forward's top 6 is much better than not being included. So for now, until a more meaningful announcement gets made, that will have to do for this week's banner moment. Okay, now let me introduce my esteemed co-host for this week's show. To my left, it is not Andy Bottoms, who requested the night off to celebrate his anniversary with his wife, Jen.
Mrs. Bottoms is awesome.
Indeed, which is why we were very happy to grant Andy's request for the evening.
Hey, put Jen on the phone. I want to talk to her.
No.
So, filling in for Andy tonight, he was an Indiana high school basketball head coach for 10 years and is currently an assistant basketball coach at Western High School. He's the host of Sports Talk with Tonsoni. He is the founder of the top-ranked Delphi Bracketology Club, and in a surprise recent announcement, he was named president of the Hoosier Hysteria Spirit Committee.
I don't like Hoosier Hysteria.
Who saw that coming? He is the coach, Brian Tonsoni. Coach, it's Tonsoni time. What's on your mind?
Well, man, it's a lull for Indiana, basketball news right now. The players are home, and we're a couple months away from that awesome event of Hoosier Hysteria, and the excitement is building down here in the man cave. But the thing that I'm thinking about is this: coaching is 365 days, and you got me on as the coach. I'm always going to talk what limited information I know about coaching. It's a 365-day job, and Archie and his staff don't have the players in town right now to work with them, but they're working on stuff to make Indiana basketball a very special place again, and the 6th banner. Working towards that 6th banner. And as a coach myself, and as we're working on our high school program now and looking at strategy and things that we want to implement in our program, it is with a lot of excitement to know behind those office doors at Cook Hall, there is a lot of good work because our ball coach is at work with a great staff. And so that brings me excitement to see how has he evaluated these players over the summer? What's he going to put in? What wrinkles are he going to use from his personal philosophy on offense and defense, and I guess we'll start seeing that at the event on September 29th.
What event is that again?
Hoosier Hysteria, I believe.
And to my right, he is a columnist for The Big Lead, a co-host for The Hangover, and he is a man who was just absolutely tickled pink when it was discovered that a glitch in the new Madden game has the announcers introducing fans to a Chargers game in San Diego instead of LA.
Oh, it felt so good.
He is Ryan Phillips.
I almost died. I thought I was going to die. I mean, I've almost died a lot. By the way, somebody was murdered. I do what's best for the show.
Ryan, that was the best rant this week.
That was the best moment of the week. I'm sorry. The Chargers thing was amazing. Just perfect. Really, there's nothing going on. This has been a really slow week for Indiana basketball, so I'm not really sure there's much to rant about.
Great intro to build.
Well, I'm just saying, like, no, we've got a lot in the show.
Said it too,
so. We've got a lot in the show to talk about. I'm just talking about as far as like something to react to this week, as typically is what this segment is for. And there really isn't much. Maybe that's the rant is, hey, let's get us some news of the good variety, of course. Is if it's quiet, that's usually not a bad thing when it comes to college athletics in the off season. So really not a whole lot going on. Very excited for, when these guys come back to campus, get back in, we'll start seeing some more workout videos and things of that nature, I'm sure. But right now is very much a dead period until, they move in back on campus. So let's just hope that it remains quiet while it should be quiet over the next couple of weeks.
Yeah. All right. Well, here's what we are going to talk about this week. We're going to talk a little bit about recruiting. Is there any cause for panic? We got a couple questions in on Twitter with people that seemed a little bit concerned. Is that reasonable at this stage? And then, of course, we will talk about the NCAA big rule change announcements, what they mean, what you should pay attention to. We'll give our reactions to that. And depending on how that segment goes, we may do our Clifton Moore offseason analysis in segment 3, because obviously there's just not that much to go off of because we haven't seen a ton of Clifton yet. So we may talk about him, and then we will, of course, answer your questions as we always do. All of that coming here on this edition of Assembly Call Radio. Before we get to all that, I do have a quick reminder for you about a great way to shop online for tickets.
That's the boring part when everyone leaves.
Yes, thanks, Coach. Remember this URL, iutickets.shop. It will take you right to SeatGeek, where you can immediately find the best deals on IU basketball tickets, as well as IU football tickets, concert tickets, and other live events. And as a bonus, use the promo code ASSEMBLY to get $20 back after your first purchase. And when you use that URL, iutickets.shop, to buy tickets, hopefully tickets that you were going to buy anyway, we get paid a commission for referring you. And frankly, it's a pretty nice sized commission. So it can really have a big impact on helping us cover the costs of running the show, costs like website hosting, podcasting equipment, and paying for Coach Tonsoni's security detail at Hoosier Hysteria this year.
When I go to Buffalo's, they'll be throwing chicken wing bones at me.
Once again, the URL is iutickets.shop. That's iutickets.shop.
Thank you.
All right, you are listening to Assembly Call Radio. I am Jerod Morris here with Ryan Phillips and the Coach Brian Tonsoni. And guys, let's talk a little bit about recruiting, because we talk about how there isn't much to react to, isn't much news going on. And part of that is that, there haven't been any big commitments, any big, kind of summer recruiting splashes. And we got these two questions in today on Twitter. And what's funny about it is they came like back to back, one right after another. So Mark says, did Archie turn too quickly to recruiting highly ranked players where we seem to be struggling to get signees? Do we need to demonstrate success before focusing so much on recruits that it appears we will not sign? And then Matt says, did Archie overshoot with the 2019 class? Early offers and interest were all to top 50 prospects. While we're in good shape with Trace and Keon, we seem to be scrambling to land a quality guard. Our targets are now in the 50 to 150 range, yet we still don't appear to be leading for any. So, Ryan, I want to know what you think about this, because to me, you kind of look at some of this stuff, and I think it's important to remember, number one, that the 2019 class is thin on guards from the Midwest. We knew that. So Carton was kind of the guy if you were going to get an elite guard, to come to Indiana out of this class, and we had a real shot with him, but we just missed. He picked Ohio State. That's going to happen. And, I think the Trace and the Keon recruitments have been so high profile and been going on for a while now. It's almost like we kind of take for granted that we're in really good position with those guys. That's not something to be glossed over. Like, while we can lament that there hasn't been a big commitment and we're all kind of anxious for it, Indiana's in really good position for 2 high quality 5-star in-state guys. And that's huge. Those are the guys that we want Archie to be targeting. So I get the concern, especially with backcourt guys, but I feel like just in the absence of a big commitment, maybe we're being a little bit impatient, overreacting just a bit to what's happening recruiting wise right now.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, the Trace and Keon, if you go back a year, were the 2 guys everybody said you got to get, or you got to at least be close with, and you got to get one of them, I would say, was a definite thing. Whereas, you got to at least be in the mix for both of them. And that's where Indiana is right now. Indiana is where it needs to be. People also need to remember that Indiana just brought in a really big class. So they're not going to take 5 guys this year. It's just not, that's not the way it works. And they just brought in a huge number of guys who are sort of a program table setting class
and got the 2 best guards in the state.
Exactly. And
Yeah.
so, you're right when you say it's not a huge guard year for the Midwest. It really isn't. And you kind of have to work with what you've got. Luckily, I think Archie and staff got some versatile guys who can play on the perimeter. Maybe that's not their initial position when they come into college, but are versatile enough to be able to pull out, maybe play some perimeter positions and fill those holes if they don't get a top guard this year, or a guard that, we like. And again, if you get 2 5-star, let's just say you get Keon and Trace Jackson Davis, it doesn't matter who else you get. That's a great recruiting class. But you would, of course, like to get another guard because of the way this stacks up. But at the same time, it's hard to convince guys to come to play when Robert Finney looks like the point guard of the future. Devontae Green's still going to be around. Al Durham, it looks like he's still going to be around. You've got, Hunter and Smith and all these other guys who are all going to be in the mix and can play on the perimeter some. It's not easy to convince guys to come and sit and wait, especially top tier guys. DJ Carton wanted to go somewhere and start, and that's what he did, where he went. And so I would say that, yeah, you've got to sort of understand last year's class when you take into account this year's class and maybe even next year's class. These things are all interrelated, and I would say that Indiana's probably right where they need to be right now. Missing out on DJ Carton's a bummer, but he was the guy you kind of go all in with because, as you said, top guard in the Midwest. And no, I don't think it's people say, like, did he turn, one of the questions from Marks is, did he turn too quickly to going after highly ranked players? Well, the highly ranked players are all in the region. It's not like he's going to New York to get a guy, or Florida, or wherever. They're all in the region. And these are guys you'd go after if they were 4 stars or, ranked, because those are the guys nearby. And
well,
so,
we have expanded out, like with Trey Mann in Florida and Anthony Harris and Book Knight and some of those guys, that now we are trying to target.
But given what Indiana is, we all know that if you get those guys on campus in October or for Hoosier Hysteria or whatever, there's always a really good chance that they'll fall in love and sign it. I mean, San Diego guy
Robert Johnson came, Troy Williams came. I mean,
Noah Vonleh. Thomas Bryant. San Diego guy got on campus, loved it.
San Diego chicken.
Hey, watch it. That's my hometown you're talking about, and you're going to be here in a few weeks.
I am.
So I would say that I think, look, yeah, you've got to expand the reach when the local guys aren't there. But at the same time, that's also the way recruiting works. If you get a kid on campus, maybe you can snag him.
Coach, are you concerned at all, or do you think things are going as they should be?
Not one bit concerned at all, and it's just the opposite of my Hoosier hysteria. I have a mad crush on Archie Miller and mad trust with Archie Miller. He's been here since 2017. He's been here a year and a half, and he gets a class that we're very excited about, and Romeo Langford. He gets into the last 3 with the 5-star guard in Carton and just comes up short. Most college coaches are scrambling in that first year to build relationships in state and to sell their vision of their new program. And basketball recruiting is about relationships. It starts early on, sometimes in the middle school, even with coaches recommending to college coaches, hey, watch this player. And so, when the freshman and sophomore and the coaches start watching them and they have them down for unofficial visits and so forth. And sometimes recruiting is a 2-3 year process. And Archie's only been there 18, 19 months, and he's getting 5 stars and the crystal balls are looking good. It is actually beyond where I probably expected him, even though I am highly biased in his behalf. So I don't think he's turning to 5 stars too quickly. I think he has to, because we want to win a 6 banner. And I think he's a guy who knows he needs to have the players to compete at that level and to get Indiana back to blue blood status. So you've got to go after those. And when you go after those, you are going to swing and miss. And in this day and age of 24-hour news cycles, it seems like it's of vital importance when we lose someone, and it's just hypersensitive a lot because we care. as fans. But the Indiana basketball program is headed in the right direction recruiting wise from my vantage point.
Yeah, I mean, it's almost like because of his early success, he created this expectation like, here we go. It's going to be a top 5 class every single time now because, we got Romeo. We had this great first class. And, those expectations are up. And so it's almost like if we don't have that big news item, people feel like the momentum is a little bit down. But I think we just have to have a little bit of patience. And I think while there hasn't been a commitment yet, there are still enough good signs to, Coach, as you said, absolutely believe that this thing is still right on the right track, probably even further along than where you might have reasonably expected it to be when he took the job.
People are underrating the class from last year. I mean, everyone talks about Romeo, but the depth of that class and the ability of that class, that's going to sustain Indiana for a long time. So you can afford to take some shots and miss. Yeah, no, you want to guard.
Race Thompson was in it.
I mean, yeah, that's the other thing is that Race Thompson was technically not a part of that class, but he really was because he came in early. And you look at, again, Jerome Hunter was a guy who I think if he played in Indianapolis, he would have been rated much higher than he was, but he didn't play against the same level of competition that some of the other guys did. And I also think that if there was a 4-star guard like a Robert Finney this year, Indiana would have gone all in on him, like a point guard like that.
Well, you got Newman and Franklin, and we're in decent position with those
But
guys.
I mean, if there was that guy that was like a standout in the area, with an Indiana pedigree, I think that they would have been all in on him over Carton or even with, side by side with Carton. But there just wasn't that guy standing out at the time. So I think that has a lot to do with why they went after that guy.
Yep.
I felt like we had an amazing conversation on all levels.
Thank you, Coach. We appreciate that. All righty. Coming up, we will give our IU-centric take on the NCAA rule changes that were announced on Wednesday afternoon. What impact will the new rules have? What should you as an IU fan be paying attention to? We will discuss all of that. Stick with us here on the Assembly Call. All righty. 16:40 for that first segment.
You have to lay out what all the NCAA changes are because I've read like 3 different things on them, and I'm still not sure exactly because
I think a lot of people are unclear about it.
Yeah, because the whole thing about them like having agents now, apparently there's something where the NBA Players Association has to agree to it, or
so they can have agents, like incoming freshmen can have agents, or high school seniors can have agents once the NBA changes the rule about the one and done. And you can have an agent, I think, to help you go through the draft process, but then you have to sever the relationship if you come back to school. So you can't have an agent if you are in college.
On campus, yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Okay.
I mean,
but that only goes into effect if the NBA changes the age requirement, which probably won't happen until like 2021.
Yeah. So, I mean, a lot of this stuff is contingent, and apparently a lot of people were just taken aback by it, like USA
because they didn't consult the NBA.
Yeah. And Coach, are you can you talk about the high school coaches angle on this? Because now aren't there supposed to be like high school sponsored events in this April period, I think, that like high school coaches are going to have to do.
Well, the way I read it is in the state of Indiana, we have different showcases. Our Coaches Association has a top 100 showcase. The way one interpretation, and I could be wrong because this all broke and I haven't talked to a lot of people yet about it. But the college coaches, I don't know if that was an open period when our Coaches Association had those top 100 kids in for a workout and a showcase. That might now be what they're talking about doing. I don't think it is up to my high school to open up and have a tournament and invite players into our field house and get the schools around Kokomo to host different events. That was one article I think you shared with me that read that it was up to the high schools to do that, and who's going to come see if there's only 5 or 10 or 15 recruits in the area.
Yeah, that doesn't even make sense. They would have one big event. Yeah.
Right. I think the state of Indiana would have one big event, whether that was an all-star camp, a top 100 camp, or maybe they would invite high school teams in June. It seems like the college coaches can go watch what we call team camps. We go late June with our high school and we play, and that's where I saw Brandon Newman play and a couple of junior Indiana All-Stars. Their high school teams were at these team camps, and it sounds to me like in June, those coaches cannot right now go watch those games when they play with their high school. And the NCAA is saying, hey, we want you to be able to go watch when they play AAU in April and in the week in July, and we want to free up a week in June for you to go watch when they play with their team. There's some problems with that. It's not perfect, and anytime the NCAA does something, they got problems with some of the the way they've the implementation is bad, in my opinion.
Yeah.
The motive behind it and some of the changes, I think people just get a little bit upset because they can't go to Vegas. They're going to have to go.
These are all good points.
They're going to have to go to University of Indianapolis and the gyms around Indianapolis, right? Which isn't a bad thing. But I think I'm biased because it's a high school event. I want more interaction with college coaches, and it's gone to the AAU. So that's my bias. But the recruiting writers and some of the event organizers, they're biased because that's their baby, and it's being changed a little bit.
So you don't buy that it's really tough to do any evaluation in a camp setting. Again, we'll talk about this in the segment, but I just want to make sure
Jerod,
you guys have knowledge.
I sent you that email about that. If your school of choice, your coach is only evaluating in 5 weeks of AAU, they should be fired. Evaluation is 365 days a year. If I'm a college coach and I can go to an open gym at Hamilton Southeastern, I'm going to go and I'm going to evaluate. That might be Zach Irvin playing there against other players who aren't Indiana caliber, but I'm going to go watch him play. And that's going to be a piece of my evaluation. A piece of my evaluation is going to be talking to the coach at Hamilton Southeastern to see what kind of character this kid is. As far as the camp is, one of the big things I learned from a Pittsburgh Pirates scout, I worked for him as a young baseball coach before I got to be in basketball. And he was a scout for the Padres and the Pirates. And he said that he would often leave at first pitch when he would go scout. He wanted to see how someone prepared, how they took batting practice, how they took infield, because if I'm going to recommend $500,000 to the Pirates as a signing bonus, I want to guarantee my bosses that they will put in the appropriate work to be game ready. They may have a bad night, strike out 3 times. My evaluation is not just going to be 5-on-5 game preparation. So I don't get the idea, and I heard that camp evaluation is probably tougher. No plays, they haven't practiced together. But again, I think that tells me about someone too. Are you a team player? Do you dive on the floor? Do you set a screen in a non-structured situation? Then you're going to come in with a little bit better attitude.
All right.
So,
I'm going to kick some of this stuff to you then.
Yeah, camps are harder. But I think there's some positives in camps, that it's not just sitting in a gym. I think there's 2 things too. I think there's courting, which means, look at me, I'm Archie Miller, and I'm at your game, and you're important. And then there is actually, do you have the evaluating of skills? Yeah. Are you a type of player that we want to put on our hot board? You can still court at a basketball camp. You can still be seen at a June team camp. So I think it changes, and I'm not sure it's the right changes, but I don't think it's this woe is me, the world is ending, recruiting is going to be horrible that we're hearing from 95% of people.
All right.
That's my take, but.
So do I even need to be in the segment? Sounds like Coach has it all nailed down.
No, we need your wisdom as well, Ryan.
Well, Jerod, and quickly, I know we got to get moving, but the other thing is there are coaches in high school that will take money too. The money is the issue. You got to try to get money out of the system, and money's probably never going to get out of the system. So it might go to AAU coaches now. It might go back to high school coaches. But I'm in education to help people, and part of that is coaching, and part of that is teaching. Yeah. And there are a lot of high school coaches that might have the chance to have a good college prospect that would like to be part of the process. I got a kid in NCAA scholarship who never played AAU. He was a baseball player, won a state championship. I sent out 35 letters. I cut VCR tape, not huddle and not all of this stuff, and sent them to coaches, begged coaches to have him down. And finally, Taylor University took him. He ended up being a 3-year starter.
That's awesome.
Coaches are afraid to work sometimes too. And I love all coaches, but coaches want it easy. Send them off to AAU, let the recruiting process happen there. If you like your kids, you will bust your rear end to get coaches to see them and start that relationship. And that's a piece of the evaluation. It doesn't have to be in Vegas.
All right, let's do it.
That's good stuff. All right, Coach, we got to see. I feel we got to get better about getting these rants while we're recording, because these are awesome. Like your Hoosier Hysteria one last time. We're getting some of the best stuff on the breaks. It's so good, though. It's so good.
You guys got to have a meeting and evaluate,
It's such good stuff. All right.
Speaking of talent evaluation.
Yeah, I got to do a better job of when I ask you questions. That's on the host.
All right, let's go.
Let's do it. Ryan's got to get out of here, folks.
I do, folks. I mean, they're technically working right now, so.
I know. We got you. All right, here we go. Let's line it up. Here we go. You are listening to the Assembly Call, a weekly show about IU basketball, plus a post-game show that goes live during the season as soon as every IU basketball game ends. If you ever have to miss all or part of an episode of the Assembly Call, there are two great ways to catch up. You can subscribe to our podcast wherever you listen to podcasts. Just search for Assembly Call, or you can watch our live video broadcasts on Thursday nights and after all IU games on YouTube. And by the way, the YouTube broadcasts also feature the between segment banner that doesn't make it into the radio or podcast edit of the show. And last week, that included an epic rant about Hoosier hysteria by Coach, which included this not so pleasant reminder about why Indiana needs to take all of its preseason practice opportunities seriously.
So we don't get beat by Indiana State by 21 points in the first game.
Absolutely. To subscribe to our YouTube channel, go to youtube.com/Assembly Call. I'm Jerod Morris. I'm here with Ryan Phillips and the coach, Brian Tonsoni. And guys, let's talk about the NCAA rule changes. And I don't think we need to go through every single one, because I think by this point, most people who are interested in this will have read and kind of gotten the big picture of it. But, I want to kind of look at it from a big picture perspective, and especially what Indiana fans should really be paying attention to when it comes to this. And I think, the first thing for me that really stands out is that, you might read the headlines, players can have agents, undrafted players can go back to school. And what's really key here is that the devil is in the details. And when you read the analysis from college basketball experts, people who really dig into this stuff, the big thing that you're seeing is that, really none of these changes are going to actually fix the big problems that this Rice Commission was created to fix, namely the illicit under-the-table payments. And even some of the changes that make sense, right? Like the one about undrafted players in practice isn't going to have that big of an impact because the stipulations in place. So, for example, an undrafted player has to have had an NBA draft combine invite. And most players who get a combine invite end up actually getting drafted. So that's not going to affect many players. It's a good rule change, but it's not going to affect as many players as it could if there were fewer stipulations on it. And then some of the changes, like players being able to have agents, number one, it's kind of hard to figure out when that's actually going to happen. And number two, it could actually cause more problems than they solve because of the incentives that are created, when you look at how this is actually going to go into practice. So it's one of those things that it's made a big splash. Not all the changes were bad. Some of them were good, but it really seems like more window dressing than really trying to solve the underlying issues. Was that kind of your take on it, Ryan? And were there any changes that stuck out to you that are good, bad, that
they're confusing. It is because and you're not sure who it's benefiting. If it's benefiting the schools to be able to say, hey, this takes the pressure off of us to monitor everything, or is it going to benefit the players because they have more options in theory? But in practice, I'm not really sure if that's what happens here, if it just looks the same. And also, a lot of these won't go into effect until the NBA and the NBA Players Association signs on. And that could be 5 years down the road. We don't know.
Or until like USA Basketball realizes they're involved in this, because apparently they didn't.
Yeah, they weren't even consulted, which makes no sense. This needs to be, any changes to this system need to involve everybody. They need to bring everybody to the table. They need to bring, hey, I'll even say it. They need to bring the AAU people, like leadership people, to the table and say, okay, what's going on is shady. What do you propose to fix it? They need to bring the NBA to the table. They need to bring all the college. They need to get top college coaches involved in this, not just the NCAA administrators and the heads of the school. Bring these guys together and say, okay, let's call amnesty here. Why are you paying kids, or why are you involved with paying kids? Like, what are the reasons? Why are the shoe companies? Why do they have so much influence? Sit everybody down at the table, get them all involved, and make this whole thing, make this a comprehensive fix that involves everybody, not just college administrators. And that's what bothers me about it, is it just seems like the college administrators are like, all right, we're making these changes. Now you can't blame us when it's a dirty pool, because we all know that's not the case. It's, colleges making rules there's always loopholes. There's always ways around them, and there's always ways people will get around the rules and cheat. There's like a whole cottage industry of people trying to figure out how to break the rules, as we found out with the shoe company scandal that broke last year. So I don't know. It doesn't to me, it doesn't really change much unless everybody's involved and everybody's on the same page.
Now, I'm curious. I don't know if you read into the details about how NCAA enforcement will change, but apparently, some of the rule changes are they don't have to like double verify something. So if the FBI says something, they can just take that as the gospel of what happened, and it will be in coaches' contracts now that they have to comply with NCAA investigations and turn over evidence. And so it's kind of like how they're getting around not having subpoena power.
Yeah.
Dan Wetzel wrote a great article about how this was really a big money grab. And what's interesting is this part of it, I think, is really being underplayed because the big headlines are players can get agents, undrafted players can come back. But as you start to dig into it, it almost seems like what's going to happen on the enforcement side and really sticking
a lot like the NFL.
Yeah. Well, and look,
jury and executioner.
Yeah. Like I don't have a big problem with there being harsher penalties on coaches who cheat. Like I think that's okay, but it does really scare me when the NCAA is taking more power because they haven't proven that they should be trusted with it, especially when it comes to investigations and enforcement.
Yeah, and when you look at the investigations, the NCAA wound up getting sued by Penn State. They wound up getting sued by a coach at USC. They wound up getting sued because and the things that came out in those cases were, in the Miami case as well, the things that came out were that the NCAA was doing unscrupulous things and likely overstepped its bounds. And, it's fairly obvious that's what happened. And if you give people that power, they will abuse it. It's only a matter of time. They may go in with the best of intentions, but they're going to abuse it eventually. So I agree with you on that. That aspect of it is a problem, especially now that it's been shown that schools can sue the NCAA and be successful to some degree. That's going to create situations where, you have a punishment and then it gets put on hold for 7 years while the thing works its way through the courts. That's not good for college athletics to have these big cases hanging over. It's got to be something where everybody agrees, or there's some kind of, mechanism in place to find an arbitration or find, an independent group to evaluate these things.
Yeah. You're listening to Assembly Call Radio. I'm Jerod Morris here with Ryan Phillips and the coach Brian Tonsoni talking about the NCAA rule changes that were announced this week. Coach, I want to get your perspective on kind of the coaching side of this, both the high school angle and the college coach angle, because, the recruiting calendar is going to change for college coaches. There's going to be now, they're going to have some evaluation periods in April. High school players are now going to be able to take a lot more official visits. They can actually, I think they get now 15 official visits. It's either 10 or 15, but they can visit the same school twice as long as
that's crazy.
Yeah. So there's a lot more now. I think the schools still have the same number. They have 28, something like that. But there will, if you get a high profile prospect who wants to visit your school twice, you're going to let him. So it's, that's going to cause a change for college coaches, not to mention, some of the differences in how the July period goes. And now they're going to have to, do some scouting at one of these big camps instead of just at the AAU tournaments. So I want to get your thoughts on that, as well as how this might impact high school coaches, because it does appear that some of the responsibility to create some of these events is going to be turned back to high school coaches, which it seems like people have wanted, because we all kind of assume that giving more influence to high school coaches is better than the grassroots coaches. But, I guess the question is, knowing how poorly this was implemented, were enough people consulted to where this is actually going to happen in an orderly, organized fashion that doesn't end up hurting the process for the players and for the college coaches trying to scout them?
Yeah, I think the implementation to me has been sketchy. The reasoning behind it, I applaud. I think there are two phases for me as a coach that's important. And I think one might be near impossible. Can we get money out of the system as much as possible? That might be near impossible. It's been with boosters in the past. It's been with some college coaches in the past. Now it's with shoe companies. That's been a difficult thing in recruiting for as long as I've been alive. But I think to make the sport better, we have to move in that way. So I applaud the NCAA with an attempt. I don't applaud them with some of the implementation, because as you said, it might cause even some more problems that haven't been thought of. The second thing is player evaluation. And for a high school coach, that's two things. You want your players to be seen and have a chance to go play college basketball if they're interested. And the second thing is, what's the best way for college coaches to properly evaluate the talent so they can make the best recruiting decisions? And so those things are the two things that I think the NCAA should be concerned with. And I agree with Jerod. You need to get people involved. You just can't drop a bombshell out there of here's what we're going to do based on the commission and not have contacted the NBA and some of those things. So from the recruiting and the evaluation standpoint, if your favorite team, and if it's Indiana and Archie Miller is only evaluating 5 weeks of AAU, he ought to be fired. Archie Miller should be evaluating.
How dare
talent.
you suggest somebody firing Archie Miller?
Please, no. I just said I had a crush on him. So, but I'm saying that if he's only
hard to get over there.
Only evaluating talent 5 weeks at AAU events on the road, then he's really not doing the job that he needs to do for Indiana University. And that goes the same with Notre Dame and whatever else. It's a 365-day evaluation. The evaluation is not just 5-on-5. If that's the case, I can write every practice plan for the NCAA. 2:00 stretch, 2:15, play 5-on-5, and we'll decide what we're going to do on game night. So the evaluation comes in skills, evaluation of the skills. It comes in character evaluation. Your evaluation is talking to high school coaches, talking to good AAU coaches who know the young man who wants to come to the program, getting a feel for it. And then I think there's two parts of the player evaluation. It is this guy good enough to be on our hot board? And then there's the courting aspect. I'm sitting at your game. That means you're important to me. It's just like a text, or it's like some of the editing and the putting the kids in the jerseys when they show up for their visits. You can still be seen at a team camp in June by the recruits you want to be seen by. You can still be seen at a basketball camp by the recruits. Is it the same? No, it might be more difficult to do, but we pay coaches millions of dollars to do their job and not to do it easy, to do it well. And so if you're, I always thought when I was a head coach, I'm going to outwork people within the rules. I'm going to outwork people. I'm going to watch more tape. I'm going to go to clinics. I'm going to talk to more coaches. You cannot outwork me, was the attitude. That's a little cocky. So I don't care what the recruiting periods are. I'm going to use them to my advantage, and I'm going to find an advantage to them. So the woe is me, I can't go to Vegas and I can't go here and watch AAU games for 5 weeks. It just changes. And sometimes change is good. And this might be a bad change. So what? Go to work for coaches. So.
Okay. So which makes sense. So you're kind of saying that, this whole storyline about how evaluation is going to be a lot harder is overblown because there's still ways to do good evaluation. Do you at all see this hurting lower profile prospects? Because it's like you've got, the top 100 camp and, you'll still have that one summer evaluation, period where they can go to the Peach Jam and things like that. Those are a lot of the kind of the top of the top. And you've already seen some mid-major coaches who have said, I'm not going to nominate a guy that I like for a certain camp if he's off the radar because I don't want other coaches to see him. So do you think it's all going to hurt some of the lower, tier prospects that really need to get seen? Or do you think that because there will be more of these, maybe high school events that they'll be able to get more attention locally, just maybe they won't be able to get seen as much nationally?
Yeah, that's that implementation problem. Are enough kids going to be seen that could have an opportunity to go play at D1 at maybe mid-major or smaller levels, or a D2 or D3? That must be addressed. And that's where Ryan's idea of getting everyone involved is the right thing, because it's about the players. My son played AAU for 4 years. We had to pay $400 to get shoes and to get jerseys. We had to pay for hotel rooms. He was a 1,300-point scorer in the state of Indiana, shot 42%, and didn't get too many offers because he just wasn't physically a college basketball player. But he played AAU, and sometimes there were no coaches at his games. And he had small Division I. He had a young man who went to Toledo on his team. So this whole idea that you're going to be seen and coaches line up on the baseline, they're going to see their guys on their board. And occasionally they'll hear a new player and then they'll go. but yes, I do think it could hurt some of those lower tier, and that concerns me. But then let's get together with the players and all the people and find a way to have exposure camps and other things else where D2 and NAIA coaches can see some of these players that might not be able to make it to some of these camps. And we're talking about 1 week. There's still the 2 weeks in April, and there's still the week in July for these AAU events where college coaches can come. It's a loss of 2 weeks in July, and some weeks are reopened in different fashions. So I still think young men of all levels of talent has a chance to be seen. And if it's not, that's an implementation problem, and it needs to be fixed.
Yeah, I wanted to step in and say that one thing that I think, and Coach brings up a great point, is coaches do have to do work, and college coaches have to do work, but high school coaches, if you want your kids recruited, you got to do work too. Get his name out there, send his tape to coaches, put his video up on recruiting sites, constantly ping that stuff and get him out there. You'll hear of coaches who are going to watch one player and wind up catching sight of another guy and fall in love with him, and he winds up the guy they go after. And the coaches don't even know that other guy even existed. And you see that a lot. And the reason why is because these guys don't all get their information out there. Some of them play multiple sports and think they're better at one sport or the other, think they're going to, might be a better football player than a basketball player, but they have more potential at basketball. Coaches finally see them and realize that. So it's on both the college coaches and the high school coaches to get that information out there. You got a kid you think can make it, work hard and get him noticed. And there's ways to do that. Take him, call up schools in your area and take him on campus, introduce him to coaches, create relationships with those coaches. I think that's a big part of this, that now there's going to be more of an onus on those high school coaches.
That's what I'm saying about outworking. My best player was a baseball player. It didn't play AAU back when I was at Northfield High School, and we went to the semi-state. He was 1,000 points, rebound, all this good stuff. And he wasn't seen. And I spent that whole senior year sending stuff to him, and coaches would call back. And then I made tapes in the old way, the VHS tapes, and sent it to players. There are a lot of coaches that once their player's done playing in March, they don't do that. There are a lot of coaches that do, and those are to be applauded. But there are some that, okay, you're done playing for our program. That's when the relationship ends, and the relationship really ends when you pass that person on. I was able to get an NAIA spot for this player at Taylor University, and he played his sophomore through senior year, was a starter at Taylor, which is a very good local basketball program in the NAIA division here in Indiana, and it takes some work. And I think coaches, if this is a little more work, I don't find that as a reason to shy away from it. If it hurts players' evaluability, yes, I think then it needs to be revamped.
Real talk here on the Assembly Call. All right, coming up on the Assembly Call, we will talk about Clifton Moore. We didn't get to see much from Clifton during his freshman season, so he remains a mystery. What do we expect from him as a sophomore? We will discuss next. Stick with us here on the Assembly Call. All righty, 18:05. That was a good long segment right there. Good job, guys. That was good. Really good points. I'm glad we found a different angle on that really than I've heard discussed, which is good. So
the other thing about the agents is if it follows the baseball protocol where the high school kids can get agents to advise them on whether they enter the draft or go to college. Now the difference is I don't know how much money influences baseball. With the
a lot.
Those kids, yeah. If it's still, but if that's modeled, that has seemed to work. The other thing is if it's the top 100 kids getting agents, where the money might be, you can find it easier. Yeah. If you want to. Maybe, I don't know. I mean, if you you have a list at the NCAA, these kids have an agent, you're going to be watching, or you could be watching to see, and you're not waiting for a story to break or a text to be, shared or something like that, then to go investigate. But maybe that money then funnels down to even lower levels. The money situation is just so hard to clean.
Yeah, I mean, it's impossible to some degree. I mean, I was talking about this the other day with some guys. It's impossible to be a football coach and a college football coach and know what's going on with all 100 of your players. Basketball, it's a little easier because you're so limited in the number of guys you've got within your program. But I mean, how are you going to know if a college football player is taking $100 handshake? There's no way to stop that.
You're not.
There's absolutely no way to stop that. Now, there's a way to prevent him from meeting with agents on campus, and there's a way to prevent, certain things. But I mean, in general, if those kids want to get money, if they're good enough, they want to get money, they can get it. It's not hard. And I do think basketball coaches bear more responsibility as far as that goes. But I mean, in football, good luck, trying to police that.
Yeah. All right. So we're already at, oh, by the way, there's a vote, Tonsoni for NCAA president in the chat. So you've, once again,
I cleaned that place up in a heartbeat.
Only if they gave you full power, though.
Yeah.
It would be retroactive top 4 seed for Indiana for all of the stuff with the phone calls.
I like it.
We're automatically in no matter what the record, because that was serious at the time. But then you phone calls later, and we have to go through the death penalty. No, Indiana top 4 seed every year.
Okay, I think if you run on that platform, you'll get every vote in the chat. So now Chad's going for NCAA dictator. He does. He wants to get.
I'm good. I'm good with NCAA dictator. I think that'd be better. Hey, Clifton Moore, do we have an updated height and weight for him? Did they list that? I know they listed some of the.
I haven't seen anything.
Things. I didn't think so. Okay, no, I was just making sure I didn't miss one.
No, I haven't seen anything. So we'll
just go with 6'10",
yeah,
220,
right about, and we're at 34:45. So this segment doesn't need to be especially long.
You tell us when to cut out.
We don't. I mean, we just don't have that much to say. So, and we got a question about it, so that leads us into it nicely.
Okay. Yeah, just let us know when we need to stop talking. I just typically on these, I just keep going until you say we need to break.
No, I know. I mean, if it's good, we can keep talking.
I tend to not have any idea how long it's taking us.
No. Okay, let me get us ready here to record. I've got the synergy stats up, and there's nothing here. So
I'm very, very bummed. The San Diego representatives lost. Did not get into the Little League World Series this year. We need something good to happen around here, all right? Sports. San Diego chicken. Wait, I said that? San Diego chicken.
Yeah. You were imitating Andy saying it, and when I heard it, when I was listening back, I about fell out of my chair. I was like, this is too perfect. Now if we could just get Coach saying it at some point.
Nope. Don't,
It's
Brian.
gotta be natural though. I wouldn't cheat and pull it out. If it happens naturally, it's coming out.
The Italians got to stick together.
That's my boy right there.
That one's definitely coming out. Okay. Let me get to where I'm at here. All right. Here we go. Welcome back. You are listening to the Assembly Call. Here is a little fun fact for you. In addition to our post-game show and weekly radio show, we have over 5,800 IU fans from around the globe who subscribe to our email newsletter.
There's a high-level operation going on out there.
And you can join too. It is easy. Just text IU to 66866 or go to assemblycall.com. You will get our weekly Six-Banner Sunday news roundups as well as our post-game analysis emails once the season begins. It is all free, and it will make you a smarter and more well-informed IU basketball fan. Again, go to assemblycall.com or text IU to 66866 and join for free today.
Make no excuses.
I am Jerod Morris. I'm here with Ryan Phillips and the coach, Brian Tonsoni. And guys, I wanted to talk about this anyway this week, but we got a question about it. So it leads us into this segment perfectly. This question comes to us from Mike. So we'll just start the Q&A segment a little early here in the show. He wonders, are we sleeping on Clifton Moore? Conversation for bigs have been around. J-Mo, Fitzner, Race, Jake, and possibly Duran. Moore has a year in the system, bulked up, and seems to have good mobility. So, Ryan, the premise of this question, are we sleeping on Clifton Moore? Obviously, we've done these off-season player-by-player analyses for every player, and we kind of dig into the stats and talk about strengths and weaknesses. I've kind of dreaded doing that for Clifton because I don't really know what to say. Like, I don't, the numbers, you look at Synergy, he had 13 possessions last year, 0.462 points per possession, third percentile. but like there's nothing there really.
I mean, what did he play in 7 games? I think we said.
And it was garbage time. He had, the one moment where he had the 2 block shots that he looked good, but there's really, I feel like nothing that we really saw last year we can take too much from, except for the fact that he came in as a freshman and wasn't really ready to contribute. So it does feel like he will have to take kind of a quantum leap in his development with the addition of new talent this year to be ready to play. But if De'Ron is out for an extended period of time, maybe there's an opportunity for him. So, what, if anything, did we learn about him last year? And what are you expecting from him as a sophomore?
He looks good in the uniform. I mean, what did we learn about him last year? We didn't really learn anything. And I think, frankly, I believe the coaches thought he would contribute at some point and thought that they would get him in the rotation, and which is why they didn't redshirt him, because they would have just redshirted him if he wasn't going to play. And I think that they just,
or maybe there was a commitment to him that he wouldn't redshirt.
Maybe. I mean, one of the two. But I think it's one of those things where if they did not intend to play him, they would have done what they did with Race Thompson and just let him develop for a year. Clearly, that did not happen. He didn't get to a level where they thought he could get out there and help on the court. That doesn't mean he's not good and didn't get better. They just didn't think he was at a point where he could make a positive impact. Because let's face it, last year, they would have done whatever they could to get an extra guy out there to help the team. And Clifton wasn't that guy, apparently. But that said, if you look at who he was coming into school, he was a guy who was 6'10", 220, could move, could even shoot it a little bit, certainly had some skills, could get up and down the court, and could block some shots. And so you got to think that there's enough talent there to certainly play and see some time, especially with De'Ron Davis down early in the year. You could be sleeping on Clifton Moore, but the thing is, we just don't know because we don't have enough evidence of what he can or can't be. We have some quick clips from the offseason training stuff. I mean, but that's really it. And so without anybody who's been in practice coming out and saying, yeah, this guy is going to be great, we don't really have much to go on. And I would love to be able to sit here and give you a breakdown of what Clifton Moore can do. But the last time I have any, video of him playing was February of his senior year. And that's, over like a year and a half ago. So it's tough, and it's a really hard evaluation to make. And it's something I think we've all kind of wanted to do because there is such a tantalizing skill set there for Clifton. But is it to a Big Ten level yet? Has he developed those raw tools to a Big Ten level? So hopefully, yeah. I mean, hopefully by midseason, that guy's, can play center for you if De'Ron Davis is still out.
Yeah, and that's one of the things. I think we were all hoping to maybe hear some whispers about Clifton in the offseason. We've heard Devontae Green has really, kind of stepped up as a leader and taken it seriously. You hear about, how talented Jerome Hunter is and some of the growth in Justin Smith. I personally, maybe you guys have, maybe other people have, I haven't really heard kind of any of those whispers about Clifton yet.
And that doesn't mean that nothing's happening.
But it just kind of feel a little bit better if you were hearing some of that stuff,
Well, and sometimes also coaches will leak the guys who they think maybe need a boost. Let's say Devontae has a rough day shooting and is down on himself. They'll go, hey, you know what? Devontae Green's been great this offseason. Because that gets back.
Devontae Green needs a confidence boost?
No, but I'm just using him as an example. But no, I mean, coaches, there's reasons coaches let certain things out and keep a lid on certain things. So, you don't know. I have no idea what's going on with Clifton Moore right now. I certainly hope that he's developing. I have heard no negative things about him, but again, no positive news either. So hopefully he's just developing along with the rest of these guys and he's ready to contribute. Maybe it's a thing where he'll have some time this year. I expect him to see the court this year. You have a 6'11 guy, 6'10, 6'11 guy, and you don't have your starting center. I expect him to see the floor. I don't know how much, but hopefully this is a thing where if he's not a starter right now and he doesn't, he hasn't blown them away, that it's something that he builds towards as a junior and then senior year as well.
You're listening to Assembly Call Radio. I'm Jerod Morris here with Ryan Phillips and the coach Brian Tonsoni. Coach, do you think at all, and I know this is hard for you to speculate about not being in there, but do you think a guy like Evan Fitzner coming in, and you think about the kind of player Evan is, he's a big guy, but he's really more of a perimeter-oriented player, not known for banging, kind of a face-up guy, can shoot it, can put it on the floor a little bit, and that's kind of what Clifton was sold as when he came in. do you think having a guy like that where Clifton can see the template for what he could become, could that help his growth as a player, having a senior and Evan Fitzner that is, because Deron Davis, I don't know how much Clifton's going to learn from Deron because he's never going to be a back to the basket type offensive player. Could that make any impact on Clifton's development?
I think so, because to evaluate Clifton Moore, I think why didn't he play? And you got to go back and why did we go to the post with Freddie McSwain at 6'6"? And to me, there are two words, and maybe Fitzner can help Clifton with these two words. It is, I think, in order to see the court, he's going to have to be more physical and more decisive. Now, physical doesn't mean low post banging and pushing and shoving, but it just means the ability to take hits and to do things. The limited time that I saw him play, I thought he wasn't as physical as a Freddie McSwain turned out to be, playing those minutes once the injury came out. And I think the other thing is sometimes it's hard for players when they move up a level, whatever it is, and especially from high school to college, to be decisive in your play to maximize your skills. And that's where a Fitzner, a catch and shoot and confident, and when to shot fake and when to drive, if he's going to be a pick and pop five like Fitzner, absolutely, Jerod. I think you're spot on there with that. That's a reason to bring him in and help him develop and play that role. But sometimes when you recruit a kid and the skill set is great, as Ryan said, it was a great skill set. Sometimes the basketball IQ at the college level is a little bit difficult. And I think that's one thing that Archie does well. He tries to keep it simple, stupid, and the whole KISS principle and use the college game is complicated, much more complicated than the AAU, as we talked about, and very much more complicated than our high school. And to give you an idea, we're implementing a defense in our high school, and we met this summer, and there were 32 concepts we had to defend. 32 concepts we had to teach our kids to defend. That's a lot of stuff, and we need to simplify that down. I don't know that he looked too confident in his decision-making, unlike the other freshmen in Durham and Smith. And I think that's why he didn't see the floor. And Ryan was right. The expectations were that he was going to play, or you might have redshirted him or done something different. And sometimes you don't know what you have till you have it. And that happens in recruiting and have a player. And our only hope is that he has developed. He has watched the players that have come in. He's watching an Evan Fitzner, and his skills then can be used to the benefit of the Indiana program.
So quickly here before we break, then, what do you think is fair to expect from him? I mean, is kind of a baseline expectation just get in the rotation? Are you expecting any more than that? What do you think is fair for him as a sophomore?
And again, I want to be sure, I'm not in the gymnasium, and so many people make judgments and they're not in the gymnasium, and that bothers us coaches at the level, at every level. But I think he's got to beat out Race Thompson, and he's got to beat out Jake Forster to get into the rotation, because I think Fitzner's going to play, and I think Morgan's going to play major minutes. And if Deron comes back, I think that's his main competition. And those guys seem to me to be really moving ahead. So I think he needs to be able to get to the floor, maybe 8 minutes at max, or it's another year of watching Fitzner, as you said.
My big takeaway from this segment is that we need to start leaking more positive things about Ryan's performance on the show to improve his confidence.
Yeah, no, you really do. My confidence suffering, clearly.
Any Ryan, I know you have some final points that you want to make on Clifton.
Yeah, I think that Clifton is a huge wild card. He really is. I mean, if we got anything from him this year, it would be so welcome, because I don't know what people are expecting. I really don't, and it's not because he wasn't a good recruit or he didn't have potential. It's just we don't know what to expect. And so, it's not like he got into a game at the end of the year and played 15 minutes and showed us some flashes and we have something to build off of. He really didn't. And so, yeah, I don't know what to expect. It could be, I don't know whether to expect a starter or a guy who does what he did last year and plays in 7 games and never really gets involved and makes 2 block shots, and Jerod talks about him for the next 9 months. So
what else is there to talk about? That's like
it's the Jeremiah April principle, right, Jerod?
Well, I try to remember these guys' positive moments and bring them up.
It's easy to remember that. Like, it really is, because there was nothing else to remember him by. So,
right.
No, I'm not. Yeah, I wasn't even saying that in a derogatory way, but I know my tone really is always aimed in that direction. So, but no, I just think that we don't know what to expect, and that's to be, that's the way it is because of what we've seen from him, which is not much.
Yep. All righty. Coming up here in our final segment, we answer more of your questions. We've got another one of those fun hypotheticals, which Clifton might actually feature in this one. And then another question about a guy that also might be overlooked. We'll talk about that on the Assembly Call. Stick with us. All right. Good segment, guys.
If he could be a rim protector, that might be a way for him to get on the court.
Yeah, if he played 10 minutes as a rim protector and like lob target, I'd be fine with that. Because he's 6'10". But it's one of those things where I truly could see either situation happening, him just having another off year, and I could also see him winding up being a starter based on what we saw in high school. But yeah, I don't know what's going on with him.
Yeah. All right, we got about 4.5 minutes for this segment, so we can get to 2 questions.
All right,
we'll kind of hit them quickly. So here, if you want to prepare, well, maybe we'll hit 3 real quick because we've got. We'll just talk about this one now. Who would make a better shot doctor, Ryan, you or Tyra Buss?
Sorry, Ryan. Tyra.
Ryan is muted.
Muted. Great. I'd love to team up with Tyra. I think we'd be a good shot doctor team, but I have to stick with my guns and say me.
Okay.
Have to say me. I'm not, and that's not a negative to her. I think she'd be great at it. But I got to stick with me. I think I'm really good at this. I do. I'm sorry. Like
that
I'm not.
Quote is going to come back to haunt you.
I think I'm really good at this.
Okay, that was awesome. Got exactly what I wanted out of that. All right. So the one question is, who most passes the looks test? Like if you just like wandered upon the team in like
of the young guys or of everybody?
No, of everybody. Like you just wandered upon the team at a rec center playing and you'd never seen them play basketball and all you could go off of is what they look like. Who would be the first few picks? Kind of an interesting little hypothetical because Clifton might be one guy because of his size.
I mean, I've got a couple picks, but we'll
save them for the.
Okay. Yeah.
And then the other one is about Rob Finney. Is he being overlooked a little bit?
Yeah.
So we'll open with that one, and then we'll get to the hypothetical with whatever time we have left. So we can hit. Let's try and go quick. We got 4 minutes, so let's hit Finney quickly.
All right.
And then we'll get to the end here.
Yeah,
okay.
You just tell us when you need to quit.
Okay. I will. All right, here we go. You are listening to the Assembly Call. We are wrapping up another week talking IU basketball. I'm Jerod Morris here with Ryan Phillips and the coach Brian Tonsoni. And we've got a few more questions from you that we want to get to. So let's hop right into these. The first one, Ryan, you'll love this. This comes from a guy on Twitter who's named Extremely West Coast Guy. So nice. I don't know. Maybe this is actually your burner Twitter account. He said, "Do you feel that Rob Finney is being overlooked?" What do you think, Ryan?
I'd say
pretty properly respected right now. I feel
I think we do. I think that nationally, certainly he is. And certainly he was last year. It depends what you mean. I think Indiana fans are really excited about him. Maybe not. And I've said from the beginning, I don't think he'll start to open the year because I think Devontae Green was going to step up. I expected that. But Rob, I think Indiana fans are real excited about what Rob brings. I know we certainly are, but nationally, I would agree that he is getting overlooked. I think that he was overlooked last year in the recruiting rankings, heavily overlooked. And, that just worked to Indiana's favor because he didn't have some of the other big boys come calling on Rob Finney. Not that he was going to go anywhere else, but he didn't make the job that much harder for Indiana.
Over under, coach, on how many games it'll take for Robert Finney to be your favorite player, or are we already there?
I don't know. A guard who can pass and run the offense is just necessary at every level. And I think he's not overlooked, again, locally. We played against him, and he just had his way with our program. But I think he's very important to the success of Indiana next year, being able to come in. And we know Devontae hopefully has evened out his play. But if it's not evened out, then there's going to be a lot of emphasis on Rob filling in and picking up that slack and maybe even Al a little bit. But yeah, I think people are going to really enjoy his leadership and his pass first, but be able to finish kind of role.
Okay, so let's end with this one, a fun hypothetical, which it's kind of appropriate given how, how many pictures we've seen of Cliff Marshall, of the guys' physiques and how hard they've worked. So this is from Matt. Which of our guys most passed the looks test? So Ryan, to put this another way, if we all went to the Y and we just kind of happened upon the IU team and we had never seen them play and all you've got to go on is what they look like, who are your first few picks off of this IU roster, do you think?
Well, Jerome Hunter's right there. I think he's just got that build of a wing guy. Obviously, Romeo Langford, I think. But with Romeo, he still has a bit of an underdeveloped body in some ways.
Like if you didn't know Romeo was who he was, would he?
Yeah, you might not. I think Jerome Hunter, I think Race Thompson, and I would say we were just talking about, but Clifton Moore, because he's tall and he's got length and, he's athletic. And I think those would be the three of the guys that I would pick, just not even watching them play, just as you're saying, just see them lined up and decide. Race Thompson looks fantastic. He has put on a lot of weight. He's
lost some weight. I mean, he's put
on good weight is what I mean. Yeah. And when we saw him in person, and he looks even better now, but we saw him in person when we were on the floor before the game we went to during our meetup weekend, and we just all kind of looked at each other like, yeah, no, he's good. He's in good hands.
By the way, we're missing the most obvious one here, Coach. I don't want to steal your thunder if this is who you're going to say.
Go ahead.
No, you go. I think we're on the same page.
Smith?
Yeah, Justin Smith.
Yeah, I mean, I picked Hunter instead of Smith, but yeah, it's.
Hey, I got a great one though. I'd pick Demezi because hair goals. I'm following.
A guy with that hair must be pretty darn good at basketball.
And a guy with that kind of hair, I want to balance off if I'm on the squad. We got to balance the hair issue.
I'll pick Demezi because hair goals. That was good. I'll tell you the other guy would be Al Durham. Because if you're looking for a guard, with the way that that his physique has kind of come along and kind of that
his arms
guy. Yeah. So, I mean, I think have we mentioned every player so far? Have we taken the super easy?
No, Juwan Morgan. Juwan Morgan wasn't mentioned.
Well, that's the interesting one. Is Juwan Morgan like he
I took Race over Juwan basically.
Legs. Yeah. I mean, Juwan is a great player. That's the thing. Like I think Juwan and Romeo, I think are two guys that you wouldn't pick, but because of their skill level, they're the two, best players on the team, but I don't know the guys that you would expect to
I'll tell you the guy.
15 seconds, Ryan.
About 2 years ago, the guy who everybody would have picked was OG Anunoby. When you saw that guy in person, he was incredibly impressive.
Yes, no question.
Oh.
And that's the note that we'll end on tonight. All right. Well, that'll do it for us on this week's episode of the Assembly Call. If you want to see us do the show live and be part of the live chat, join us at assemblycall.com on Thursday nights for the live broadcast of our Assembly Call radio recording. Or you can always subscribe to our podcast by searching for Assembly Call wherever you listen to podcasts. And don't forget to go to assemblycall.com/join to join our free email newsletter. You can also text IU to 66866. Thank you for listening. We will be back to talk IU hoops again with you next week. Until then, keep your elbows in and your eyes on the rim, and go Hoosiers.
Thank everybody for coming out.
All right, I got to get out of here, folks. Thank you.
Well done, guys. Well done.
All right, I do have to get out immediately because there's a ton of preseason football going on tonight that we all have to cover.
Wow. Look at you talking about a college basketball program in mid-August and then preseason football. Your job has better nights than this.
It does. It really does. It really, really does. Baker Mayfield debuted. I mean, that's really it.
Oh, Chad said he's going to start taking notes for sound clips. That would be awesome.
Don't make Jared's job any easier.
That would be so helpful. Just timestamps. And by the way, I take these from the YouTube video. I use the YouTube because that's the only one, obviously, where the middle stuff is recorded.
Yeah,
that is awesome. That is awesome. There were some good ones tonight. Might have been. I mean, this was full of them.
I don't want to see the size of the folder you have those in. It's got to be enormous.
It's massive. Actually, the biggest challenge is just organizing them and then trying to figure out each episode which ones to have handy. So it's one of those things like. This is an asset that we'll have for years that we can kind of draw on and have fun with. So it's good to get them and have them in place.
All right. I got to get out of here.
Thanks everybody for being here. Coach,
thanks Coach.
For filling in on late notice. Yep. I hope Andy had a nice time with Jen.
I hope she doesn't. Mrs. Bottoms is awesome. I hope she doesn't watch this and realize that he forgot.
Well, no. We don't know that he forgot. We don't know that he forgot.
Sure
he just said late notice. I'm sorry for the late notice.
We don't. Okay. Later, guys.
All right. See
Later.
y'all. We'll see you guys next week.